Welcome to my channel. I'm registered psychotherapist qualifying in Ontario, and today I would like to share some information about how your brain works and what's happening when you are overthinking, and we'll share some strategies about what you can do about it and how you can decrease overthinking. Let me ask you something. Have you ever replayed conversations in your head over and over again? Maybe you are lying in bed at night and something you said earlier suddenly comes back and you start thinking, why did I say that? Did that sound strange? I should have said something different. And if this sounds familiar for you, you are not alone and you are in the right place. Many people replay conversations throughout the day or at night. Sometimes we blame ourselves or others, sometimes we imagine better versions of ourselves or of what we have said. And today we are going to talk about why this is happening, what's happening in your brain, how does your brain works during this process, and how you can break this cycle of overthinking. So what's conversation replay? Imagine this: you have a conversation, it ends, you go home, and then your mind presses replay, and like watching the same scene over and over again, instead of improving anything, you begin to analyze every detail about conversation or experience that you had, or you start to criticize yourself or imagine different scenarios or outcomes. In psychology, it's called rumination, especially if the same topics are coming over and over again. If you are thinking about the same topics over and over again, it's called rumination. And this replay, it's not a flow or a character flaw. It's your mind trying in its own way to make sense of something that happened and mattered to you. And when conversations linger like that, it usually means it touched something important for you, or this topic matters for you, and how you see yourself, how you want to be seen, or how much you care about getting it right. But here is important things to consider. Instead of asking, what did I do wrong? What if we try asking, what does this say about what matters to me? And because buried inside that replay is not just criticism, there is an intention. And let's slow down together. When your mind goes back to conversation, try to notice this. What part keeps replaying the most, and what does that part suggest you wish had happened instead? And that wish is important. It's not just regret, it's a clue. It points to what the kind of person you want to become, the kind of communicator, person or version of you that you are already trying to become. And now imagine something slightly different, not a perfect version of the conversation, but just a slightly better one. Maybe you paused for a second or longer, maybe you were just a bit kinder to yourself in that moment. Just notice the smallest shift that felt meaningful in that way. And because change really comes from tearing everything apart, it comes from noticing what's already working, what's already was useful for you. And here is something people often overlook. Even in the conversation you are replaying, there were parts of you where you did fine. Maybe you listened, maybe you showed up, maybe you didn't say something you might have regretted more. So your mind skips over those parts, but they matter. They are evidence of your capability. They are evidence that you can do it again. And these are clues to understanding yourself better. So instead of replaying it like a count room where you are both the defendant and the judge, let's turn it into something more useful. A quiet rehearsal space, not to punish yourself, but to gently practice. Next time I might say it like this, or next time I'll give myself a breath before responding. And it's not a failure, it's refinement. And one more thing just between us is that if you care enough to replay a conversation, you already care enough to grow from it. And we don't need to get rid of that part of you who cares. We need just to guide it and to understand better what you want. So what works for you, not against you. And overthinking can be redirected, not by fighting, but just giving it a better job. Because your mind is already active, it's already searching for meaning. We are just going to guide what it searches for. So when you notice the replay starting, not after 20 minutes, but in the early moments where you catch it, that's your turning point, and you can stop, and you can tell to yourself, I need to stop this. I need to stop here, and this is the moment where I care. And then gently remind yourself, who do I want to be in this situation like this? Not who you should have been, not who you failed to be, or not who you are growing, but the person you are trying to grow, the person whom you are trying to become. Maybe it's a kind version of you, steady, compassionate, thoughtful, caring version of you. Just pick one that feels the closest to you. And now shift the question. Instead of asking, why did I say that? Why am I like this? Or when you just start noticing overthinking the first sentences, you can interrupt it with the question. So what does this tell me about what kind of person do I want to become? And you can take the next intentional steps towards the person that you want to become. For instance, if it's something related with your career or with your studies, you can decide to take the smallest step you can in order to improve or gain skills towards your education or career. If you want to become better in conversations, in communication, you can start reading books about communication or relationships. So we move towards something more constructive, something that opens a path forward. And the question, and you can use these questions. For instance, if I were being that kind, compassionate version of myself, what would I understand about that moment, and what would that version of me focus on instead of criticizing or blaming yourself or others, and what might they say to me right now? So let this version of you respond, not perfectly, but just trying to understand what you want from this situation, who do you want to become, and taking one step further into what you really want. So for instance, if you don't want to be the one who is constantly overthinking, what you would like instead, imagine just a grounded, believable future, and you are in a similar conversation or with yourself, for instance, and you start to replay conversations, but this time you're a little closer to the person whom you want to be. So what would be the first small sign that tells you this is different, that I'm taking steps towards the person who I want to become? What are you doing even slightly differently? What are others noticing about you in that moment? And what are you noticing about yourself? And maybe you can ask yourself, what do I do to make that possible? What did I already have in me that can show up here, that I can use in order to become the version of me that I want to become? So for instance, if you are overthinking about your education, about your career, and you notice at night that your mind starts to replay any experiences related with your career or with your studies, the moment you have noticed it, you can ask yourself, so this tells me, this conversation in my head tells me that I care about my career, so what's the smallest step I can take right now? Which of my skills that I have already I can use at this moment to become the version of me that I want to become? Maybe it's listening for a podcast, maybe it's asking somebody's opinion about your career or education, maybe it's trying to learn new skills, but whatever you will choose from it, I'm sure that this would be more useful than constantly thinking and overplaying conversations and experiences in your head. And because that future version of you isn't imaginary, it's built from pieces of you that you already have, because even the fact that you were overthinking about it shows that you care about this field that you are thinking. And overthinking says go backward and fix it, but you can't live there. This shift says use the moment to step slightly closer to who I want to become in the next time. So the next time your mind presses replay, you don't have to shut it off. You can say, okay, if we are going to replay this, let's do it in a way that will help me to become who I want to be. And then let your mind rehearse not your mistakes, but your preferred decision. When you notice overthinking, that moment itself becomes meaningful, not a failure, but a signal that this is where I get to choose who I want to be. So instead of seeing overthinking as a source of stress, you can actually see it as an opportunity that's showing you, serving you, opportunity to become a version of you that you want to become, to get closer to a change that you want to achieve. So now we can deepen the picture of this preferred version of you that you want to become. Maybe you want to become kinder, calmer, more caring, more present, more grounded. However you want to be, and whatever matters to you. Here are some questions you can use to help yourself to describe what you want. When overthinking begins, you can remember who you want to be. What would I do in the very first few seconds after I notice overthinking? What would be different in how I respond to my thoughts? What would I stop doing that I usually do? What would I notice in my body when I'm being calmer or more present or more grounded? How would my breathing, posture, pace change? What would I notice about myself? What would I be paying attention to more instead of replaying? And where would my focus gently shift? And if I were being compassionate towards myself, for instance, if that's your goal, how would I respond to a self-critical thought? What would I say to myself in that moment that feels supportive but still caring? And how would I treat myself if I were someone I truly cared about? So here is the reason why your brain does this overthinking. Your brain is not trying to harm you, it's just trying to protect you, and it thinks, if I will analyze, overthink about it more, I can avoid mistakes in the future. So overthinking is related with what's happening in your brain, the way your brain is designed. And here is something very important. Your brain is not trying to harm you, it's trying to protect you, and it thinks, if I analyze this situation, I can avoid mistakes in the future. So it enters problem-solving mode. But sometimes, instead of solving the problem, the mind creates a loop. An experience is happening, event, we are analyzing, criticizing ourselves, and there is more analysis. And the longer this loop continues, the more anxiety increases. So you can use the strategies we have discussed earlier to break this cycle and to redirect your attention, and to ask yourself different questions to help yourself to become the version that you want to become. And our brain is evolutionary, was programmed to maintain social connections. Structures like amygdala and prefrontal cortex constantly analyze social interactions and potential threats. And in the past, social rejection could mean danger for people, but your brain tries to protect you by reviewing interactions. Maybe you had very critical or criticizing parents, or maybe you were raised up in such an environment, and right now, by overthinking conversations, it just tries to protect you from possible negative experiences you had in the past. However, when the system becomes overactive, it can lead to anxiety, sleep difficulties, trouble focusing. So asking yourself, do you replay arguments with friends for hours? Maybe you go over feedback again and again. Maybe you mentally rehearse what you said in relationship. And if yes, this means that your brain's safety system is highly active and it's trying to protect you, but maybe sometimes it overreacts. And so using the questions that I have mentioned, it's possible to break the cycle and to redirect your attention and to start taking action towards the version of you that you want to become anytime when you notice these thoughts. For instance, I have noticed that if someone has said something in a meeting, a person who is overthinking might think about it for 3 days. And if you ask yourself, do you think anyone else is still thinking about it? Probably the answer would be probably not. And here you will realize that you are wasting your time, your energy. So instead of using your energy for worries, for anxiety, you can use it for something else. to create a version of you that you want to become, and to take steps towards the version that you want to become. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask it, and you can leave your questions in the comment, and see you in the next videos.